Today's video is sponsored by aliens, because who else could have built the pyramids? Hello everyone, my name is Thomas White and this is Thomas Writes. Today we are going to be talking about To Sleep in a Sea of Stars by Christopher Paolini. This is Paolini's debut sci-fi novel, which came out in 2020. Paolini is best known for his work on the inheritance cycle. The first book, Eragon, was published when he was just 19 years old. As someone who is in their mid-20s and trying to become an author himself, it is really cool to see someone who was able to make it big at an even younger age than I am. With Paolini being so well known for his work in the fantasy genre, I was very eager to see his take on science fiction. I will be reviewing the audio version of this book, which was narrated by Jennifer Hale, who is best known for her work as Commander Shepard in the Mass Effect games.
I'm Commander Shepard, and this is my favorite store on the Citadel.
She is a fantastic voice actor, and it's really cool that this is her debut audiobook. This is also why I am wearing the N7 jacket. Kicking us off into the review, I want to start by giving a bit of a content guide. In terms of content for To Sleep in a Sea of Stars, this book is definitely on the heavier side of things. There is coarse language throughout. There are a couple of steamy scenes that are done tastefully enough, but they're still there. There is also a lot of violence and death, and some deaths are described in pretty gory detail. So if any of those things are triggers for you at all, I would tread lightly when it comes to this book. This book is listed as adult science fiction, and it definitely lives up to that genre. So if that is a turnoff for you, there is your warning. The story follows Kira Navarez, a xenobiologist who becomes the first human to make contact with alien life. The discovery of the life form dramatically changes Kira's life and puts her in the crosshairs of both the human military and a new alien race who is hunting after the alien life form. Kira is eventually picked up by a group of misfits aboard the ship the Wallfish. Together they set off to discover the origins of the alien life form and to put an end to a brewing interstellar war. Next up, I'm going to talk about the world building. And as a debut sci-fi novel, I would say that the world building is pretty solid. You get a lot of elements that are pretty familiar for sci-fi, with all of Earth being united under one military, a race of alien invaders, a symbiotic organism that attaches itself to other life forms. Those are familiar tropes we've seen in other science fiction media, but I think the way Paolini does it keeps the world engaging. We learn more about the aliens so that they are more nuanced than your typical sci-fi species. They're not just generic bad guys who want to destroy all of humanity. Likewise, humanity is made a bit more morally gray in the actions that the human military takes. The interstellar war that starts brewing between these two factions feels very morally gray, which I think is very good for engaging the reader. Paolini also plays around with some fun concepts in his world. For example, he creates a whole new religion of people called the numerologists, who are people who worship math, which is a lot of fun, and it makes sense for a world where so much of the technology is based on numbers and just having such a high familiarity with math. Another concept that I really love in this book is that of ship minds. Basically, it's a brain in a jar that controls an entire warship, and Paolini uses this concept to explore some really interesting themes regarding what does it mean to be human, what is the value of human life, is this something that makes sense to be doing, is it ethical, is it moral? It raises these interesting questions for the reader to really chew on and think about. And as this is the first book in a new universe of planned books that Paolini has, It leaves enough dangling threads, it leaves enough mystery for you to want to read more about this universe. He doesn't spill the beans all at once, he leaves enough dangling threads to keep the reader hooked for future installments. While the derivative aspects may be annoying to some readers, as someone who likes military science fiction, who likes stuff like Star Trek, Star Wars, and Mass Effect, I felt perfectly at home in this book. There was enough familiarity there to keep me interested, while not so much that I was bored. At the end of the day, the world building was strong enough that I'm interested to see what more Paolini can do in this universe. Next up, I'm going to talk about the characters. And without spoiling anything, I would say that I like all the characters in this book. Each one of them has a very distinct personality. Each one of them have little quirks that set them apart from the others. Kira is a solid main protagonist, and she is very empathetic. You as the reader come to sympathize a lot with what she is experiencing and going through. This is helped by the fact that Jennifer Hale's voice work is so good in this book. She does a good job of giving each character a unique voice, some of them more serious, some of them more goofy, and it helps give a lot more personality to each of the characters. My personal favorite, though, has got to be Grigorovich. He's basically a ship mind who is slowly going insane from all of his time working as a ship mind, and as such has all of these funny, eccentric qualities about him, and he has a very nihilistic perspective on the world, which is played up for a lot of humor. On that note, the humor in this book is pretty solid. There is a lot of puns in this book that Paolini said in an interview he had to fight to keep those in. Some readers may find the puns a little annoying, a little cringeworthy. I find them very endearing. They come across as dad jokes in the best possible way. I think it adds a lot of levity to the story, and a problem that I see in a lot of sci-fi is that the characters are too dry, too stoic, and so I appreciate that Paolini is trying to give some levity to his characters, give them a little more human qualities to make them more relatable for his readers. So I am perfectly fine with having all of these puns. Also, the romance that's in this book is perfectly fine. I wasn't head over heels for it, but I wasn't cringing over it either. I know a lot of authors struggle with putting a good romance in their story, but in this case, I thought it fit the motivations of the characters involved, and it didn't feel out of place in this story. Overall, I liked all of the characters. They felt very distinct from one another, and Jennifer Hale's voice work added a lot to each of them. Next up, I'm going to talk about the plot, and unfortunately, this was the weakest aspect of the book to me. The paperback version of this book is almost 900 pages long, and unfortunately, I don't think the book justifies its length. There is a lot of time spent on world building, a lot of time spent on trying to flesh out these side characters, but at the cost of the momentum of the story. There are also a lot of instances of the characters getting caught by the bad guys, then escaping, then getting caught again, then escaping, and it gets a little repetitive. It feels like the same plot beats, just with different locations. And it takes us a long time to get to the point where the story feels like it's really revving up. While I did enjoy the climax of the book, it is a bit strange because it feels like it has two climaxes. Without spoiling anything, there are kind of two main antagonists that are set up, and the protagonist kind of has to deal with both of them in separate ways. And the first climax I found very engaging and a lot of fun, and the second one I didn't think was as strong. I thought it was kind of weak, unfortunately. And so the book ended on a bit of a weaker note than I would have liked. Overall, the plot was not terrible, it just meandered a few too many times for my taste, and the structure of the ending was a bit odd. Before I give my final rating, be sure to like and subscribe for more content. I post new videos every Saturday, and be sure to leave a comment down below about what you thought of this book and what books I should review in the future. At the end of the day, To Sleep in a Sea of Stars is a decent sci-fi adventure book. It has some good world building, some good characters, but unfortunately suffers from some pacing issues as well as some issues with the plotting. So I'm gonna go ahead and give it 3 out of 5 stars. I'm still interested to see where the series goes, as like I said, I love the world and I would really look forward to seeing what Christopher Paolini does with it. Thank you again for stopping by, and I'll see you next week.